All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you. We'll start with roll.
Director Assad Lucas. Here. Director Battistelli. Here. Director Goldstein.
Here.
Director Marsh-Holshin.
Here.
Director Potter.
Here.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Second. Director Assad Lucas.
Aye.
Director Battistelli.
Aye.
Director Goldstein.
Aye.
Director Marsh-Holshin.
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
All right, rise if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight. We don't get visitors very often. All right, we're going to start with the superintendent's update.
So I'll just say, given the audience that I see out there and a lot of the dialogue that I'm having with a variety of stakeholders right now, I think the singular topic of strong interest and concern relates to budget for next year. I could start to piecemeal some of that puzzle individually in my comments, but we do have an agenda item tonight about the budget that Gina Lanier, our CFO, myself, and some others on staff will collaborate on. So for those in the audience with interest about that, there'll be a lot more detail to share about like the picture and the puzzle we're trying to solve. But instead of me doing a little bit and then Gina and others doing some of the same ground here in a few minutes, I'm just going to defer the rest of my time and focus on budget with her in a few minutes.
Thank you. All right, Board of Education comments, recognition, awards, and vision. Director Potter?
Thank you, President Goldstein. I want to start by saying good evening to everybody. I also would like to highlight that I'm incredibly proud to be representing Adams 12. We seem to always provide incredible opportunities for our students. Horizons Band and Legacies Band both had the opportunity to play in Dublin, Ireland this week, so they are abroad doing that, which is just an incredible thing. And I know not every student gets that opportunity, so I'm grateful to be part of a district that helps provide that. I also want to say that I completely support and understand freedom of speech and the right to assemble and how important it is to advocate for school funding. We've talked about it a lot here at these board meetings and before and after board meetings and everything. And, I appreciate everyone's willingness to go out and kind of have that fight. I think it's an incredibly important one so that we can continue to provide resources and support and opportunities to those, to our students here. I am saddened that it has gotten to this point, if I'm being completely honest. I wish that, I look at our community and we've had discussions, I've had discussions with community members on all different political places, and there's a feeling of we voted for people that cared about public education. We trusted our legislators to do what's right for public education, and here we are today not having school tomorrow because we see legislation coming down the pipeline and changes from the governor that are really going to negatively impact us. So I hope that they will listen. They will listen to all of the voices of school board members across the state, superintendents, educators, staff members, and we can see some positive changes that take place, because at the end of the day, I very much so am concerned. I'm worried, I'm saddened for the students tomorrow that will be going without resources, that have to have an interrupted day, that aren't going to get their lunch tomorrow, the parents that have had to scramble, that maybe don't have the time off, or maybe they, are already struggling to make ends meet, and now they're going to have more time away from work. So I am concerned that it took kind of these extreme measures to hopefully see some changes in the end. But at the end of the day, I hope everyone stays warm tomorrow. It's going to be chilly. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Marsh-Holshin?
Thank you. I too want to call out the bands in Dublin because everybody was talking to me about that at the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Denver. And obviously, most people know Legacy is my home high school. So congratulations to them as well as Horizon. I wanted to thank the Frank DeAngelis Foundation for coming and putting on their school safety presentation. I was scheduled to go to it and then came back from a work trip with COVID, so I was unable to attend that. I wanted to thank Northland for hosting us last meeting for the community engagement and getting to speak to their students, especially about the new additions to the STEM program. That was really great. And yeah, I at the Capitol a lot, and I would like to call out some of our legislators, especially Representative Byrd. I think she's doing an incredible job, and I think that missing tomorrow is really sad, but I would rather students miss one day and get a lifetime of education than us keep taking this, because we need to stop not funding education at the state and federal level. So thanks.
Thank you. Director Battistelli.
Maybe that was a sign. No, I'm kidding. So I had a very productive week last week. I visited a couple of schools. I went to Malley Drive and spoke with Kristen Powers there. She's a lovely principal, lovely vice principal. They've had a really great success story, I think, that we're not terribly aware of. So since 2022, in the Colorado Department of Education's school accountability framework, we've seen some great improvement there. I think they started out at around, 25, 30% on that framework, and now they're in the green. They're around 50%, which is remarkable given the fact that they went through COVID-19 to get to that point. So a big shout out to the Malley Drive teachers who have obviously been hustling and working really hard to make sure that our kids are learning. I also visited Skyview Elementary, and I feel terrible because I did not bring my Skyview notes. So I might have to postpone talking about that one until I'm able to refresh the conversations that I had with her. But I do think I recollect that we've seen some great math score improvement over the past year. And so there's a lot for the principals and the teachers and the students to celebrate together in that area. I would also like to thank the teachers for their advocacy on behalf of our children and their public education experience. And really, this is teachers standing up for what's in the best interest of our kids. And it's not necessarily, oh, great, I get a day off tomorrow, because nobody wants to go to the state capitol and stand there for 3 hours. And that's not a good PTO day, but I appreciate you doing that. And as Alexa said, I think we're at the point with education funding in Colorado where we have to do big things, because it's just come to a point where it's getting to be untenable. We can't operate any further with the adequacy studies showing how we're already grossly underfunded, being 46th in the nation in per pupil funding. And there are correlations that show that when you invest more in public education, you do see performance improvements in kids. The data is out there. I work at CU Boulder. I'm happy to share those resources with anyone who wants them. So again, I just thank our teachers for doing that. And I know a lot of us are planning to come out and support it as well. I wanted to bring my son. Unfortunately, he got sick, and so I don't want people thinking he's going to give them the plague. So he won't be with me tomorrow. But I do plan to go out and show my support as well for all public education districts in Colorado.
Thank you. Director Asad-Lucas.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight, taking out time of your evening. So unfortunately, I have not been able to visit schools the way I would like due to craziness with my own work. And the majority of our clients, as I've shared, receive services through Medicaid with disabilities, and a lot of scary stuff coming down with that. So really been consumed with that. However, I have been able to attend a couple things. I attended a screening for the Counted Out Math is Power documentary, which I highly recommend. You know, as much as I like to think I know something, I really don't. And that documentary was really enlightening and helped me even understand that the importance of approaching math is not just teaching it, but understanding the concept of it. And I highly recommend it if you have not seen it. Also, unfortunately, I've not been able to attend a unified basketball game, but I did hear that Thornton beat North Glen last night. But, so, congrats. One thing I do want to say, what I really do appreciate the unified basketball game. A few of my clients have played, who are now in Special Olympics, played when they were in high school, and they still talk about it. I mean, these are clients that are in their 30s and 40s, and talk about it. I mean, and they necessarily didn't go to Adams 12, but they maybe had these opportunities in the districts that they attended, and this is such an empowering program for them, which really then fueled their love to continue playing as adults in Special Olympics and even try out other sports. So I also want to give a congratulations to Legacy and Horizon for their incredibly hard work in getting this amazing opportunity to play in Ireland. I also want to say thank you to our district, our educators, everybody, for continuing to fight the good fight and ensuring our kids get the funding that they deserve. You know, one of the things, so my daughter is a sixth grader at Century and is attending a Boston trip coming up, and I went to a meeting, and just watching, you know, the teacher, Michelle Pearson, who's going to be taking the kids and has been doing it forever. I don't think I've ever appreciated somebody as much as somebody who's willing to take a bunch of middle schoolers somewhere on a field trip and be so excited about doing it. This is what it's about. I never got that opportunity to go to a small town in Nebraska. There were not those opportunities, and this is before Nebraska even had the voucher program that took away from our public schools, even more so. And so it was just such an exciting opportunity, you know, attending my kids' parent-teacher conferences, where it's the student-led conferences, and my little kindergartner who has a really hard time socializing and hard time expressing himself, being so excited because the love his teacher has given him to learn and is so supportive. You know, and as has been said by others, it's really hard that, yeah, we have to lose a day. However, if this doesn't get fixed and this doesn't get addressed, we're going to be losing a lot more than just a day of learning in years to come. It's kind of a make it or break it point. And so we have to continue advocating and working to ensure that our kids, all kids, get what they need, that our state funds students the way that they deserve to be funded, and that, and again, like Alexa said, even from the federal level, don't take away things from kids that will help them be successful. So thank you, everyone, for your fight in this. Last thing, please do not forget to sign up for the 5-Star 5K. It is April 26th. This is another amazing opportunity. Again, that funding help support that gives for students, families, community, coming together in a really fun way for a really great purpose. So, yeah, I think registration's still open, T-shirts are still available, so definitely register before those run out. And I hope to see everyone there. That is all I have for this evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your support, and I hope you all have a great week.
Thank you. I will not be placing a bet with you on the 5K. I will walk it. All right. I went out to Shadow Ridge. It's been a couple weeks. I see Kim McLaughlin back there and got to go into classrooms and see what was going on. I got to sit with teachers while they were working with their coaches, Kim, one of them, and their DDI, their data-driven instruction, and a lot of thoughtful conversation going on, a lot of cool things going on in classrooms too. I did go to the Adams 14 State of the Union. I was invited. I do kind of interact with them down there quite a bit. And it was really nice to see what was going on there. I went to the NEA Retired Leadership Summit in Detroit last weekend. And I always enjoy hanging out with educators from all over the place. And you would think right now, with the possibility of the Department of Education being erased, that there would be really a gloomy conference. But I will tell you that I was given the opportunity to see and hear from some really amazing people. There's a book called Schoolhouse Burning by Derek Black, if you are interested in reading books of that nature, written by a guy from Tennessee. And it was introduced by his former teacher, who's a retired NEA person. And he gave everybody a copy. And he talked about, we are under attack. Public education is under attack. And it's a shame. I also got to rub elbows with President Becky Pringle. If you go down to the Capitol tomorrow, the NEA president will be there also, but there's going to be so many people there, I don't know how close any of us will get to her. But she always is very inspiring when she talks. And if any of you know who Mary Kussler is, she's been out to Colorado a few times. She's the government relations person for NEA. She too is very inspiring. And I actually left that conference feeling very inspired that there is hope, and we just need to continue to do what we do. I did take a little time for hanging out with one of my old colleagues from North Glen Middle School. And I don't know if you know this, but Detroit's across the river from Canada. So we took the opportunity to go have dinner in Canada. It was not the easiest thing to do, by the way. Been involved with the IBS negotiations, and I went to the movie Count Out Math. Math literacy is extremely as important as language arts literacy. And, some of the things that our students face in terms of grasping the concepts of math, it came out. Went to North Glen Middle School last week, too, and got to go into some classrooms there. And I did go to the unified basketball game last night against North Glen, against Thornton High. And yes, but both teams played well. And I'll tell you, you go to these games enough that some of the athletes were the same athletes that had been there previous years. And I will tell you the most heartwarming thing from the evening was Anna Rosa. If you're from North Glen High, know who Anna Rosa is. She sang the national anthem. A young lady with disabilities, and it just was amazing. I believe tomorrow night or next week is Mountain Range versus Thornton High. I will be at that one. And the reason that I didn't wear a Thornton shirt tonight is because I wore a Horizon shirt. I'm wearing a Horizon shirt. I felt like Horizon needs a little love. They've had some real tragedies the last couple of weeks. And I want you guys to all, keep them in your thoughts. And this is really hard for me, but we've also had a couple of staff members passed away that I worked with. Elise Frank Martin, school psychologist. She lost her battle with cancer a couple of days ago. I go to the same synagogue as her, so that was really hard. And then today I found out that Gail Peak passed away. I worked with her too. She was at Federal Heights for many, many years, and if you know Big Gail, she too fought really hard. But then, I just want to make sure that we recognize that and honor them. I got a letter from an occupational therapist from Child Fine, Rose O'Donnell, telling me about their administrative assistant, Jody Davis, and how wonderful she is and that she's going to have to be leaving. And they just wanted the board to know the greatness of the work that Jody was doing. So that's my summary. Thank you. All right, public comment.
Good evening. The board welcomes public comment to learn about the preferences and concerns of the Adams 12 five-star community. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Please use the microphone and state your name and city of residence before beginning your comments. Please give any handouts or information you would like to share with the board to Lee Coca here to my right. A 3-minute timer will be set for each speaker. Please keep an eye on the timer and you will be informed when time has expired, and we will ask that you end your comments at that time. Our first speaker this evening is Thomas Scoville.
Is on? Hello? There we go. Thomas Scoville, Thornton. Been a while. In my life, private sector unions have shrunk as they destroyed businesses like steel and autos. Today, unions thrive in the government sector because government can tax, and unions cannot drive government into bankruptcy and out of business. I think 100 years ago, unions served a useful purpose, but since then, protection and safety have been taken over by the government. No need for unions. So today, there's not much left for unions to do except make whatever they touch turn to crap. Tomorrow's wildcat strike is more evidence. Our problem is poor student performance, especially for kids from poor families whom it seems you don't know how to teach. This is a tragedy because kids need to know how to read to become financially secure adults. Sadly, I hear little from you on getting kids to the performance standard, but I hear lots about wanting more money. Let's have order. Pardon?
Let's keep order.
Sadly, I hear little from you on getting kids to the performance standards, but I hear lots from you wanting more money. This continues after the recent and very large union pay raise. I say if you want to talk taxpayers out of more money, you ought to consider doing a better job. I know you are impeded by the union because it has one mission: more money for union members. Lip service to the contrary, to them, nothing else matters. So tomorrow, students are out of school because too many teachers will be lobbying government for more money with no thought for the students who will miss a full day of instruction and a lot on the following day because of lack of continuity. Sadly, this board is a fully owned subsidiary of the union. Taxpayers, parents, and students deserve better. Please get on with it. Otherwise, you serve no useful purpose. Finally, Tabor's my friend and a friend to all taxpayers. I just helped my granddaughter do her first tax return on Sunday. She's getting $177 back from the state of Colorado. Not a bad deal. Madam President.
What?
Keep your hands off Tabor.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Rethinger.
I want to thank the board for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Jonathan Rethinger, Thornton resident, proud father of 2 Horizon High School graduates. I began teaching because I love literature. I planned imaginary lessons the way mathematical savants write equations on windows, everything logical and mysterious, inevitable and hypothetical all at once. But there was one thing the aspiring teacher in me never imagined, and that is the unspeakable love I would come to feel for my students. Sharing in their amazement as they witness a Broadway show at the Denver Center for the first time, taking photos with their families at graduation, celebrating when they win a Betcher scholarship, laughing with them until our cheeks hurt, cheering their achievements, and grieving their deaths was not something that any teaching program could have prepared me for. Only those who are in that classroom, those who are in that most energetic of spaces, who have borne witness to the artistic dynamism, who have stood testament to their effortless beauty, can understand the depth of that unique relationship. In the midst of my 26th year in this work, here's what I know. Educators care deeply about children. Teachers don't spend untold hours planning lessons, writing learning objectives and success criteria, providing personally written feedback for glamour. They don't relinquish their privacy and their personal ambitions for days off. They don't finance a Corolla on a 7-year term for grandeur. They are paid in the invisible currency of their students' success, in the beautiful noise of their enthusiasm, and in the hard-won outcome of their dedication. Similarly, we do not take collective action on a whim. We demonstrate because we care too much about your children to see their sweetness wasted on the desert of neglect, excuses, and half measures. We sought and failed to resolve this matter at the ballot last November, and now we face the prospect of empty classrooms and diminished services. But we believe too deeply in the breathtaking souls that populate our classrooms to see them abandoned by those bestowed with the sacred duty of protecting them. We are too invested in their becoming to see them abandoned by a line item veto. So we show up, we demonstrate, we shout, we disrupt, because we believe our children are worthy and that they are endlessly enough. And until legislators do right by our kids, until those with the power of the purse are the same in practice as they are in profession, until they declare their priorities with their pocketbook, until they begin protecting children with the same fervor they protect their positions,
Sir,
they will hear from us.
Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tricia LaRue.
Hello, I'm Tricia LaRue. I live in Thornton. I'm an Adams 12 parent and the DLP at Mountain Range. Last week, the Department of Education was gutted. That has consequences. A student's future shouldn't depend on if their state values education. As a teacher, I'm gutted. It's heartbreaking to fight for our students and our jobs year after year. Nationally, we risk losing equity among states. Opportunities for students should be consistent no matter the zip code. Students on an IEP or 504, GT students and multilingual learners, students attending college on a loan, those at a title school, and those coping with large class sizes. We have students whose mental health is suffering, students whose families struggle to put food on the table. Our schools provide support. Every child, every day. We know their name, strength, and needs. Without federal oversight, states that don't value these protections don't have to provide them. And that is why teachers, administrators, staff, and students held a walk-in today at schools across the country. Locally, in Colorado, K-12 education is underfunded by $4 billion. That's $4,600 less per student per year versus the national average. Did you know 95% of Colorado students attend public schools? Being fully funded to 1989 levels isn't enough, but we still celebrated that fully funded era at the Capitol last spring. And now, the state can't keep balancing the budget by taking from education. And that is why we're standing up tomorrow at the Capitol. A cut is a cut, and our students are paying the price. Even more close to home, in Adams 12, we're facing cuts larger than any since 2011. I was here at Niver Creek Middle School. It was devastating. After those cuts, class sizes ballooned when we lost teachers. We lost deans, counselors, and campus supervisors. 3 things we need now more than ever. I mean, have you ever been in a high school lately? Full-time librarians at most schools were cut to half, and we lost many other amazing ones, including the Teacher of the Year. We lost middle school sports, outdoor education, and so much more. Now faced with declining enrollment, we also lost a mill levy that we so desperately needed. Thank you, Superintendent Godowski and the board members supporting this fight. This isn't a holiday, it's hard work. Every teacher standing up tomorrow took a personal day because our schools and our students matter. We had no other choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia.
Our next speaker is Joshua Williams.
Hello, my name is Josh Williams. I am a Thornton resident, and a teacher in the district for over 20 years and a parent of 2 Adams 12 students. I'm an English teacher, and we're always telling our students to consider our audience, yet I'm struggling to envision mine. To whom exactly do I address my comment? Certainly not the school board, who undoubtedly opposes major cuts to education, nor am I speaking to the district level admin, who are likewise against this loss of vital resources. I'm obviously not speaking to my colleagues here in red tonight, the counselors, instructional coaches, content coordinators, registrars, social workers, custodians, secretaries, and everyone else who not only support, but embody the vital nature of public education. So what am I to do other than maybe introduce those of us in red yet again to our community? We are educators. We are teachers and coaches and locker openers and backpack organization facilitators and drill sergeants and shoulders to cry on. We counsel, we encourage, we raise the bar, and we applaud from the stands at games and performances. We stand closest to the door in an emergency between our students and danger. We are skill builders, dance chaperones, school moms, snack providers, Kleenex and Band-Aid dispensers, and sadly, lonely advocates. We plant trees in whose shade we will never sit, but we can't do that without necessary resources: seeds, soil, shovels, water. According to Colorado's Education Effectiveness Rubric, an effective teacher is willing to, quote, advocate for improvements to teaching and learning at the local, state, and/or national level. And yet we are still criticized by some community members and falsely accused of whining for more money or striking or abandoning kids for doing just that, exactly what our rubric demands: advocating for the resources we need to serve all of our students. At my school, whenever we see someone doing something that is way outside of their job description, we joke, other duties as assigned. Think about tomorrow that way. Our students need us to stand up and with one voice demand from the decision makers that they find a better way. A way that doesn't eliminate what they need: middle school sports and lunches and books in their hands and support professionals and engaging electives and not being one of 37 in a classroom. We can only hope that many of you will add your voice to our righteous cause and join in our advocacy for their education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Our next speaker is Valerie Meters.
My name is Valerie Metters. I live in Westminster. I'm an Adams 12 graduate, parent, and reading interventionist at Coronado Hills. I choose to live in the district I graduated from because Adams 12 is elevating student success every day. It has been through many programs students receive and appropriate class sizes that success is achieved. However, our district is facing serious cuts, ones that will impact the students of our Adams 12 community through, the margins are cut to the quick. As a parent, I would like my child to experience the education I have had in Adams 12. The students of Adams 12 deserve an educational experience that Mr. Godowski and I have both had. And I want to say thank you for calling for a work day to allow me to advocate for my child and for the students I serve. They deserve to have every choice available to them and have teachers who are not overwhelmed by classes with too many students and needs to meet. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ann Namath.
Hello, I'm Ann Namath. I've been a teacher in Adams 12 for 24 years, and I'm here with a friend who might speak in the microphone next time. Okay. Moral support. When deciding what to do, whether it's talking with a friend or deciding to take a personal day to protest, I pause to remind myself of greatest consequences the reality one person creates for another. What we each do and what we each say creates a reality somebody else has to live with. The decision to protest potential cuts to school funding creates an immediate consequence of missing a day with students. Teaching is what I love, it's what I choose. I would rather be in the classroom. To choose to miss a day in the classroom is in an effort to create a consequence that will last beyond my own lifetime. We are currently funded 30 years behind the rate of inflation. My generation of teachers and the next generation of teachers deserve to fight to move things forward and not regain what was lost. The reality we are working to create, the consequence we are working to realize for our students, for the next generation of teachers, is funding that allows public schools to remain public and serve all of our students.
And just a shout out for someone who's been teaching for 30 years in the district, this is our home and we love what we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dennis Vogel.
Good evening. My name's Dennis. I'm a Thornton resident. I am not a teacher. I am a parent of 2.5 Thornton high school graduates, one almost graduate, hopefully. I am here in support of the action for tomorrow. I think that the need for collective bargaining is high, and I think that the need for collective action is now. We, as a community, have been shorted for funding for education for 80 years. This has been a long time, intense program that has been undercutting our education and trying to dumb down our entire population. And to have our funding now getting rid of the BS factor and only being in the 80s, 1980s, for funding is ridiculous. It is absolutely abhorrent that of our neighboring states, we have one of the strongest economies, and our funding per student is lower than that of Kansas, Nebraska, and Wyoming? Seriously? I cannot even imagine how we can justify screwing over our kids to save a few dollars in taxes. Unions are we the people. The government is we the people. Unfortunately, one of those is protecting us, and the other one is trying to screw us over actively. Gutting the Department of Education is abhorrent. I'm going to use that word a lot, I think. But I support all of you going out to the Capitol and speaking your power and your voice.
Thank you, Dennis.
Our final speaker is Keith Maines.
Thank you. Keith Maines, Adams County. Thornton City resident, and my kids are older now. I came to speak of a little different issue because I'm not sure where we stand in this particular district on this issue. And it just recently came into the public news, and so I'm very concerned about it, and I hope that I have some indications that there are some issues going on. I'll start by saying I fully appreciate the many teachers who care about their students and are making a career of teaching children. My own wife is a teacher, and she's not teaching right now, and taught for many years both in the classroom and my own kids as well. My daughter picked up the bug, and she's a teacher as well. And I know she really cares about the issues that you all face in the classroom, and I see them every day. And so I appreciate the people who are really fighting against, and doing the job of teaching our kids. I'm calling attention to the policies about allowing boys into girls' restrooms and locker rooms. It was recently in the news, and I don't know, and I don't know if I can ask a question here of what the policy is there, but it was in the news. An Illinois school, there were staff that blocked girls in a restroom because they didn't want to change in front of a boy who was pretending to be a girl. And they certainly have the absolute right of their own body, and that to me is sexual harassment. And if our policy is any different here in this county, I would tell you I would very much support a lawsuit against that district, or certainly against that school and against those staff members who participated in blocking that person. And so that is my concern. And I hope that our education would not be in the job of indoctrination, but in teaching our kids the important elements of reading, writing, math, and so on and so forth. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate myself. I went to the public system, and I'm currently a pilot, but and I benefited from science, from the science and all the math and stuff that I learned, and I really appreciated my teachers, and I certainly appreciate all the ones who are doing that kind of work for us today. So, but can I ask that question, what our policy is? That's my only question.
I'll just jump in and say, I'm going to ask our legal counsel or one of my members of staff to email you the guidelines we have in place. Simply stated, what we have in place now is aligned with Colorado state law that does extend protections to students who identify as transgender. We'll get you the details of that.
Okay, well then I protest that, because a male is a male and a female is a female.
Okay. I believe. Board committee liaison reports, DAC, FAC, and LRPAC. Is there a DAC report?
There is, and I might need to have, if Dave is willing, when we get to the portion where Dave did his review of the MAPS data, I think that's some good news. And I don't know about you guys, but I need some good news right now, particularly around our 7th and 8th grade students, where I think we saw, he shared with the DAC committee that I think we saw a 10-point math score improvement yeah. So that's something to celebrate. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah, I'd have to pull the numbers up. I know we saw significant, in terms of math, there was significant increases in growth comparing pre-pandemic data to current year data, fall, winter, as well as last fall, winter to this fall, winter. Reading was up in most areas, but at a couple grade levels, it was down compared to last year, I believe in 2nd and 3rd grade.
Yeah. So thank you. We all needed that good news, right? I feel like Eeyore sometimes otherwise. Other things that were talked about in the DAC committee, it was very rich and very fruitful. There was a lot of conversation around the spending survey that the DAC committee shares with people who belong to the student accountability committees. And a lot of the conversation was around the need to revise it moving forward because it uses a lot of let's say, administrative jargon, meaning some of the questions needed to be translated into examples people understand. And also, it's just a really long survey. Again, this is just a survey that we use with the SAC committee members just to gauge their perceptions around things. But it was a good conversation. It was a heated conversation, and we got some great feedback out of it. And the final thing is the DAC is facing a bit of a leadership, sudden loss of leadership, and that's something you don't want to just dump new people into that role without any sort of prep work. But I think the committee managed to work out a good system for addressing that and filling that gap in the short term. So that was the District Accountability Committee.
Thank you. How about the FAC?
I was able to listen to part of the FAC, unfortunately not all of it, but there was external monitoring reports on insurance and receivables, multi-year expenditures, and penalties and filing, as well as working on the monitoring report. And I believe a lot of the work that Gina and Aaron are doing is around the budget, as we know, and we'll get more information from that.
Thank you. LRPAC has not met since the last time I reported out to you, but we do meet tomorrow. So I will have something to tell you at the next board meeting. All right, fiscal year 26 budget update. Gina?
Good evening, board. Yay, it works. All right, so as Chris shared in his comments, we'll talk a little bit about a budget update. I expect Bo and Chris to do some chiming in as we go along, and as always, please stop if you have questions. Sorry, the pollen is killing me. So we'll talk through a little bit about the School Finance Act, our projected funded pupil count, revenue estimates, and then this is where we'll do some sharing of information around things the district has talked about and lots of moving parts, hence the more to come. Okay, as I have already shared, the inflation for the School Finance Act is 2.3%, which means our base funding, everyone in the state of Colorado's base funding is growing $195.42 per pupil. In our modeling, we are now assuming that there will be the modified implementation of 1448, What that means is that for the upcoming school year, we will be funded on 4-year averaging. That's down from 5-year averaging in the current funding model. And it will be implemented over 7 years. The phase-in year 1 is a 10% of the increase for 1448 as compared to what our funding would be with the School Finance Act of 94 modified to 4-year averaging. So it's a 10% implementation of 1448 in year 1.
So I've got some color commentary on slide 1. If we can go back, I'll just highlight a few
Of
things
course.
that I think are important, and some of what I say, some of the audience may have heard me say before. I'll start with inflation. The way that our school funding system in Colorado works is that they calculate the amount of inflation that's gone on last year, so throughout 2024, and then you get some money that allows you, as it extends to things like employee compensation, and start to pass on to people the money they actually needed to pay for the inflationary goods and services the past year, and you don't start to get that money until July. So you can be paying more for eggs and bread, gasoline, and other things for a year and a half before we get more money that we can pass on to employees to help them manage those expenses. We have a strong interest as a leadership team, even in a really challenging budget, to find ways to provide, at minimum, resources to staff that help them pay for the cost of inflation last year. On the HB 1448, just want to emphasize that 1448 does a few basic things. One is that it gives more money to small rural districts that I think it's often unknown that over 100 school districts in Colorado have fewer than 1,000 kids K through 12. Some of those districts are 30 to 50 kids K through 12. Many of them are a few hundred to 500. And at those very small systems and all the transportation expense they have, they consistently find themselves not able to be viable and continuing to dip into reserves. And they beg for money almost every year at the legislature. Part of what 1448 attempts to do is to say, instead of begging for more money each year, we'll recognize that small school districts just don't get enough under our system to keep the doors open long term. That's a positive thing for sure. 1448 also gives more money for kids who are multilingual learners, kids who are at risk, defined largely by free and reduced lunch status, and for special education needs. So that's what's behind 1448. Those all serve very legitimate needs in our state. The challenging thing about the averaging discussions, I continue to hear our governor say that we should just go to a current year count, and that having averaging and funding that blends where we've been over a 4 to 5 year period is unnecessary to meet the needs of kids where they are now, and it's a complete falsehood. The governor likes to promote that he founded the New America School 20 plus years ago. I'm confident that he hasn't spent 15 years balancing budgets and increasing enrollment and declining enrollment as I have. And I can tell you lots of examples about how you sometimes have more kids in a school and you don't need more money. Next year, we may have a school in our system that we anticipate will have 42 more kids. Under the state funding system that the governor envisions, $500,000 more would come to that school, and yet they won't need to add any more teachers, any more paraprofessionals, any more staff, because they'll have appropriate class sizes, appropriate ratios of pairs to kids in need. Conversely, you can lose 42 kids, and under the governor's conception, lose $500,000 in funding, and you can't do without the same number of teachers and paraprofessionals and staff to serve them. So he is disconnected from reality in a significant way, and it's frankly insulting to me, to those in the audience, and all of those who, with integrity, manage school budgets day in and day out and year in and year out, for him to suggest that we're somehow into a money grab for kids that are in vacant seats now. We need that money desperately in a state that by objective studies says that we're $3.5 billion to $4.1 billion underfunded. To put that into context, we currently have a general fund budget for Adams 12 of $390 million approximately.
That's our total program.
Total program. And the governor, the adequacy study that would have us get another $4.1 billion as a state, would send about $270 million more to Adams 12. That's a 70% increase to get to what objective studies say is an adequately funded education that's provided in many other states in our country. So I am beyond angry with the governor and his just insistence to message to our community and our state in ways that are dishonest and disconnected from the reality of serving kids effectively.
Okay, so on this slide, what I'm showing you is the 2024 October count for the district. We have the line for district managed schools and charter schools. This does not include the CSI schools. So in 2024-25, we had 34,668.8 funded pupils. That used 5-year averaging. In 25-26, using 4-year averaging, we're projecting that number is going to go down 905.4 students. And simple math, multiply 905.4 times roughly $12,000. That's the year-over-year reason why our revenue is challenging. I really wanted to give you that context. The impact of going from 5 years to 4 years is 320.5 students. So if we had stayed on 5-year averaging, our funded pupil count would have gone down 584.9, not 905.4. So that difference in averaging is definitely material in my world, and helps explain some of the revenue challenges that we're having. You can see additionally that our charter schools, we're projecting them to grow a little bit. They are remaining relatively stable or flat or growing in small increments as compared to our decline.
On that slide, I'll just say that you may hear from some members of the legislature and the governor that we're going to be up 1% to 2% in funding for next year. It's not accurate. And the key reasons why it's not accurate is that the way school finance works is that charter schools that are authorized by the Charter School Institute, their students are included in our account and we just pass the money through. So that's not money coming to us to manage and support our schools or our charter schools. The second thing is that in so many of the runs we've seen from the governor and legislative staff, they have an inflated at-risk funding count for us. Our at-risk count is expected to decline by about 6% next year because of fewer students being on the Medicaid rolls, which has been like an automatic qualifier for free and reduced lunch status. That's going to decline, and many of the runs we've seen heretofore don't factor in the accurate data about how many students will be free and reduced lunch next year. And then the third piece is they often represent a higher enrollment for us than what we think is going to be real. So when you have a lot of inaccurate variables built into the calculation, you can markedly misrepresent the funding that's coming our way. So if you hear tomorrow from folks, Adams 12 is going to be up 1.2 to 2%, don't buy it. And we can give you more information about why that's not true.
So this is a look at what we're expecting for revenues for the next fiscal year. So our ongoing revenue, we expect it to increase a whopping $311.5 thousand. That's because the district's School Finance Act portion is projected to decline $1.1 million. We do have an inflationary increase for our mill levy override money, and we factor in the portion of property taxes called abatements. We're projecting that total to grow to $847,000, or grow by $847,000, and then our categorical funding will grow by inflation to an additional $540.7. With the change then the next line is our change in one-time resources. And so we're looking at the availability of about $15.6 million in one-time funding that can be used at the district's discretion. And so part of that is our projected available fund balance. That's the unassigned fund balance above the 4% floor that we are in policy required to maintain. And then we have, these are not, the reduction isn't fully determined, but we're likely to reduce a one-time transfer to the curriculum reserve of $4.5 million. So that gives us these one-time resources of $15.6 million.
On the curriculum piece, I'll just note, we currently have close to $10 million in that fund. So there are funds for us to do some implementation next year at the middle school level and to have funds for future years. But we've determined that we're not going to move forward with a math adoption at elementary next year. We feel like it's the wrong thing to do for a variety of reasons, including the recognition that we've done a lot of change in the literacy space, including this year having benchmark reading and writing both being combined together. And we feel like another year of sustaining that work and letting people settle into that is better than adding yet another thing into the mix. So just wanted to add that detail.
All right, so I'm going to go through this slide quickly, and then I'm sure Bo and Chris are going to want to do some color commentary. We have spent, my goodness, at least 7 hours in meetings this week talking about key decisions that need to be made at the district level. We are continuing those conversations as we get refined and updated information. The finance team will continue to refine and update our projections. That's the unassigned fund balance that's available. Those are constantly changing numbers, and making our best guess in middle of March when we have, several months of actual expenditures that need to happen, the audit accrual period, blah, blah, blah. It's our best guess. We hope we're right. We hope we're close. We put a lot of thought and analysis into coming up with those numbers. So we're not, using a magic 8-ball or anything. There's a lot of thought there, but there are factors that can change that number that are out of our control. We will be waiting for more information on the finalization of the School Finance Act. Hopefully we know that by May 7th. And then, of course, we will update all of those numbers in the amended budget in January once we know our October count. We're constantly monitoring the updates around federal allocations and what implications may happen there with the state budget. And then healthy meals for all. I went back and forth about including this, but I do think it's important for your awareness. The state has a $50 million shortfall to fund healthy meals for all. And so they're looking at a couple of options. The state is looking at a few options. One of those options would be that the non-community eligibility sites, CEP, would go back to free, reduced, and paid lunches. We have 3 of those schools in our system right now. That's Legacy, Horizon, and Westlake Middle School. That's one potential outcome. The other outcome is that they would potentially fund all of the schools to stay free through December, pending an outcome of a potential ballot measure. And then the third option is that they would pull that $50 million from the state education fund. So I just wanted to give that awareness. And then the last piece I have came to my attention maybe the end of last week or beginning of this week. In the current School Finance Act, there's clear language on ensuring at-risk funds stay with the district or charter school based on their percentage of at-risk students. There's 2 statutes that deal with that. I learned through the figure setting JBC hearings that the statutes that exist, the language in them doesn't work for 1448. So the recommendation to the JBC was to repeal those statutes. What that means for the district is those portions of our funding would be a straight per pupil amount from the whole pot, rather than allocating to the CSI schools and our charter schools based on their actual at-risk ELL and special ed students, they would get an equal share of the total. So that has the potential to cause an additional reduction in our revenue that we have not contemplated. Not great news, not excited to share that. We have, we've been updating our lobbyists, we've shared these concerns, and so hopefully an amended or revised or new statute comes into play, because I believe most people think those funds should go to the schools who have that need, but we don't know where that will land. So, and now color commentary, and I'll add anything you guys want.
Bo, do you want to go next? Anything you want to share?
Not yet. Go ahead.
Oh, you're going to be the closer. All right. We'll have Bo Fobert be the closer tonight. I'll highlight a few things that I think are just important for the audience to hear. One is we're doing a lot of modeling about budget scenarios. We'll talk with our principals about some of those things in depth tomorrow for a number of hours. One of our core interests is knowing that we're making reductions throughout the system that will be painful, that will leave us short of doing what we feel like we can and should do for kids. But we want to be in a spot that whatever final plan we land on across leaders and educators and classified staff at all levels, folks feel like we've been fair and thoughtful in managing this really tough budget that's in front of us. We do, in our modeling, have a step increase plan for certified and classified staff. Those percentages are slightly different between the two groups. We feel like giving a step increase is an important thing to do. We worked hard over the last 5 or 7 years to change how our salary schedule works, to make the cost of step increases at scale less costly, with the interest of not foregoing steps even in really tough times. This is a really tough time, but we feel like we need to move forward with steps and meet that expectation. The same is true of lane movement for educators who complete more credits and meet various benchmarks and thresholds along the schedule, to allocate funding for that. We have interest in some COLA increases too, to get us at least to that amount of inflation I talked about before, if not beyond. The big struggle and debate is, should we do that with one-time funds, or should we do it with ongoing revenue? The way that we'll get to ongoing revenue is to make bigger cuts. And so that's one of the real big struggles that we're up against, and that we'll have more discussions with principals about, and discussions in our IBS discussions coming forward, but that's a hard part. Health insurance, there's a number of things that are getting more expensive for us next year. I'll highlight some of them. One is health insurance. We thought that we might get a 10% plus premium increase for next year, which we've been fortunate in Adams 12 not to have big health insurance premium increases through Kaiser for my tenure here. They've usually been in like the 3 to 6% range. We were hearing up until today that we thought we'd be at 10% plus. We now think there's possibility to be somewhere between 7 and 9%, depending on whether we make some adjustments to our plan and how things like deductibles work and co-pays. We'll see what makes the most sense in that space, but it's a touch better than we thought it was. A few days ago, a week ago, I was talking about needing to allocate $2 million more for health insurance premiums. We feel like that's going to skinny down to about $1.3 million, so that's helpful. It's still money that we don't have, but we're glad that it's shrunk down. There's a number of other things that are getting more expensive that we just absolutely have to pay. Like it or not, utilities are one. We're forecasting significant expense increases, especially for water, and then also some increases in natural gas and electricity. We anticipate for like our maintenance group that's fixing broken down HVAC systems and other building systems, that the parts budget, we've been in the red consistently, and there's more and more inflation that we're expecting there. There's lots of uncertainty about what tariffs may do in terms of pricing for a variety of items. So we're going to need to make some increases for things like our maintenance budget, our custodial supplies budget. And there are things like our IT contracts where we have third parties who provide maintenance support for software systems, hardware systems, that IT's been, instead of implementing additional services and refreshing devices, maybe at the same scale as I'd want, they've been borrowing against that money to pay increasing costs for maintenance contracts for a couple of years. They're going to go into the red in 26, 27 if we don't give them more money to pay those increasing bills. So that's about a $600,000 increase. Those are just some highlights about beyond just the deficits that Gina highlighted in terms of revenue year over year and at going backwards. We also have some of those cost increases that they're just non-negotiable for us. We are going to work hard with our leaders, with other stakeholders to find the best possible way to minimize reductions, but it's going to be a hard year. We've looked at various scenarios, and there's just a lot of tough job loss akin to what I've heard folks like Tricia describe earlier on in the 2010, 11, 11, 12, 12, 13 year. It's a really hard and heavy time, and I hope that there's a way that as a state and as a community we can break free from it. I'll just highlight some final points that I often say about budgets that put us in the spot. We are currently 14th out of 15 in the metro region in terms of supplemental revenues that our community has approved for us. There's lots of communities that have lots of people with low incomes and high poverty that have invested more in their schools than our community has. There's places like Aurora, for example, where 70% of their kids are free and reduced lunch, where they have a much larger mill levy override than us. And we find ourselves trailing all of our neighbors other than 27J, sometimes by massive amounts of money. It's a $90 million plus difference each year in terms of what Boulder Valley gets to serve their students versus what we get if you cross to the east side of Sheridan to serve kids here. So mill levy override and equity is a problem. Our governor and legislators often don't want to talk about it or acknowledge it, and they're the ones, at least our legislature and sometimes our other leaders over the last 30 years who've created that problem. It used to be when I was young in my career that you could supersize your funding with an override by about 9%. It's now that you can supersize it by 50%. And some districts have done that, many of them all around us, and we haven't. So that makes some of the pain that we're gonna feel here bigger than some other places where they have resources to draw upon for mill levy overrides that we just don't have. We just have to figure out as a state and the community where we want to give, because right now the reality in Adams 12 is we at the state level have seen a number of statewide ballot measures not go forward, and there's people saying, like our governor, that we can do more with less and constantly asking to reduce tax rates. And we find ourselves in this spot now that a year ago they're celebrating the Taylor Swift songs about we're breaking up with the budget stabilization factor and we're never getting together, and then you come up with a cutesy new description for it this year and change the tune completely. So we either have to add more money in terms of state taxes, we either have to change Tabor refunds, or we have to add significant new money in at the local level. And if we don't, there's not any magic rabbit that I can pull out of a hat or the board can or that Gina can that's going to take away the real challenge and pain that we have. So I hope at some point all three of those things to some degree change, because right now to be funded at $390 when we should be at $660 and 70% of a bump being what it would take for adequately funded education in Adams 12 is just completely wrong. Bo?
That's not very nice. Chris, Gina did a really good job with the nuts and bolts. What I would share for all the audience tonight is behind all of this work we've been thinking about are people. And one of the things we continue to be regularly cognizant about is how do we get this as right as we think it needs to be, because there's a lot of noise in this, and yet we know people need to know sooner than later, and need to know with dignity, and need to know in enough time to feel supported. So we talk a lot about the numbers. I want everybody in this room to hear we're also thinking about how this is going to play out for individuals in our system. Unfortunately, to do what we need to do around compensation, maintaining key work in our system, we are going to have some reductions, but we want to move forward that we get that number right and that we support people that are going to be impacted by this, as thoughtfully as possible. And I just want people to know that the discussions aren't always around the money, A, B, C. It's around how do we take care of people when the news is what it's going to be. So that's what I'd add. I echo Chris's point that as a state, we've got to have a reckoning around this, because there have been far too many times where we've been making choices that aren't about where do we cut frivolous. It's where do we really swallow hard about not doing things that kids deserve, and I'm tired.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Gina. Is there any questions?
I do have questions, just follow-up questions. So the model that you've provided to us, Gina, it takes a look at the most recent sort of compromise being promoted by Representative McCluskey, correct? So it's the 10% this year, 10% increase, retaining the 4-year average, right?
Correct.
Okay, but last year when people voted on the School Finance Act, the plan for this year was to have what in place?
It was the 4-year averaging, and year 1 was an 18% implementation, and the School Finance Act of 1994 that is compared to 1448 was still 5-year averaging. And so when you change the number that it grows by and the percentage that we're implementing, the impact for Adams 12 results in us receiving that 1.1 million less in revenue. If we, and I'm going from memory, I'm going to look at Aaron and see if he can pull it up to shake his head. I hate quoting numbers, you guys know that. My recollection is if implemented with 1448 as written and current law, we would have seen a year-over-year increase in revenue of about 3.5 million. Is that the right model? Aaron shaking his head, yes. We've run 17 models, so I have all the numbers jumbling around, but it's a significant impact. Better than the alternative, but.
Yeah. And then the next question I had is, and this is something Superintendent Godowski brought up, which is that the Medicaid numbers may be falling. And I wanted to ask what the cause or reason behind that might be.
That's a great question. So during COVID, they implemented some measures where income verification was not needed to retain Medicaid eligibility. Those were lifted, I think, last year. And so this was the first year since COVID that people had to prove their eligibility to remain Medicaid eligible. And so our students who were Medicaid eligible were in that free and reduced lunch category as a direct certification. And roughly 6% of our free and reduced lunch declined by about 6% because of that Medicaid eligibility.
Okay, thank you.
Paula, one point I would just add to, in terms of the speaker's proposal, at this juncture, she's carrying forward a proposal that the governor has made. And beyond the 10% implementation of 4-year averaging, he's also demanding that enrollment averaging go completely away over the next several years. What I've consistently seen from colleagues throughout the state is, no way are we saying yes to that deal. There's just so many examples of how our state has consistently overestimated revenue and that we're going to be able to do all these great things. And then the next year it's like, oh, sorry, we can't do it. So one example is the School Meals for All that Gina talked about, the $50 million deficit. A second example is Universal Preschool for All. We can do it for everybody, and we can give you even more hours that we talked than of service than we talked about when we put it on the ballot. And it's like, oh, nope, we don't have enough money to do that. We'll change that idea. We can do 4-year averaging and not have the budget stabilization factor. That was the theme last year, and already they're reneging on it now. So in terms of trusting the governor to accurately forecast revenues and say that everything's going to be great next year, no one's buying it.
Well, and that was going to be with the 7-year phase-in, this is what we were talking about today, there's no guarantee. And that's one of my concerns is they're talking, it's like, oh, it's 10% this year, but the next year, how much it would be the percentage? And then the year, there's no guarantee that would even happen.
That's correct. And the phase-in, the way it works is year 1, 10%, year 2, 30%, year 3, 40%, year 4, 50%. Wait, it grows 10, 20, another 10, another 20. And so at the 7th year, you get to 100. If I was looking at it, I could do that a little easier. But yeah, that's how the current bill is written.
Yeah.
But you're right, no guarantee.
And the other thing, I just had an observation around this, and it was around the falling enrollment numbers. And I think sometimes in what I hear is we just need to do a better job of retaining students. But what I would like to point out is that of the 172 districts in Colorado, 136 have falling enrollments. This is not a culture problem per se. This is a state problem. We're losing people in this state. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, we're losing, people are moving out of the state and birth rates are down. And so those are two of the primary causes of our declining enrollment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Okay, on to Board Policy 2.5.8, Policy Revision. You have a proposed draft. Has to do with when does the board have to approve expenditures and revenue?
That's correct. We're talking about Board Policy 2.5 Asset Protection, and specifically one portion of that policy, 2.5.8. And it talks about when the board needs to approve asset acquisition and disposition. And it's a $500,000 threshold. And the easy part is the $500,000. However, over the last 3 years since this policy has been revised, we've had a lot of internal discussions among district leadership about when board approval is required and when it is not. And my proposed solution to try to address that is to define property asset acquisition right in the policy, and also to define disposition right in the policy.
So does anybody have any questions? We're going to just talk about it tonight, and then we'll vote on it next time.
And then I have another wrinkle to talk about too.
In this particular one?
Yes.
Or- okay, go ahead.
Well, this week another situation arose that I did not put into this policy yet, but I may take a shot at fixing this in the next couple of weeks and ask you to vote on that in April. And that is a situation where we had hail damage of around $1 million at 2 of our buildings, VMAC and Future Forward Wash Square. We report that to our insurance carrier. They pay us $1 million minus our deductible, and we need to make repairs for approximately $900,000. Because a repair, restoration is an asset acquisition in excess of $500,000. I believe under current board policy, we would have to come to the board and get you to approve that. And if you want to approve that sort of thing, that's fine, and we don't have to change the policy. If that's something that doesn't seem like would require or be of interest to the board to do that, which I think is sort of a perfunctory ministerial type action, we could add another exception to the first paragraph. That first paragraph currently says that there are exceptions basically for things that the board has already approved, like implementing a bond program, an override plan, or specifically identified budget items. And my draft in my head so far is to potentially add another exception that says repairs funded by insurance proceeds would not require additional board approval.
So chew on that. Go ahead.
Can it fold into this one, or would it have to be its own separate change?
Well, because we're not planning to vote tonight, I would write that up into a proposed change to the policy to be considered and voted on at the April 9 meeting. And I could prepare two versions, one with it, one without it, and you can choose which one you want.
Okay.
Thank you.
I should do that. Thank you. All right. Board Policy 2.5.7. That's under operating limitations.
I can keep talking if you want.
Yep.
All right.
It's all on you.
Board Policy 2.5.7 is another subpart of asset protection. And again, in 2022, the board made some changes to that policy. And the policy on 2.5.7 talks about when the board would receive procurement reports. And it says that the level of detail and the frequency of the reports will be established by feedback from the board and is intended to be flexible. I'm not aware of the board giving any feedback recently, and I think the question to the board is whether you want procurement reports. If so, how often and how detailed? And I'll let Gina answer any questions you have about procurement reports and how much detail they may have.
Questions, comments?
That's one I'm just going to need to think about for a bit.
And this is something we're not requesting a change in policy or recommending a change in policy. We're just reminding the board that that policy is there, and if you want procurement reports, provide feedback and you will get them.
I'll just add some of what I've heard board members say over time. So we started this policy about 25 years ago now, and I think the original policy wanted us to provide maybe a monthly or quarterly report of every expenditure of $5,000 or more that board members could come in to the board assistant's office and review. They never did that, and we stopped as a staff providing those reports because no one was accessing them. Then I think there were discussions about we'd like to look at things over $500,000 in terms of an annual expenditure. Sometimes it's like, give us the top 20 or 30 vendors that we work with. And then there's been some discussion about, I don't know that we as the board need any of that information because there's times, especially in more recent history, that we've had groups, I believe, like the Finance and Audit Committee, that look at some vendor expenditure reports. So that's some of the history that I've heard. If it helps just for some further thinking about what you'd like to do.
Would this report tell when RFPs are up? I just wonder, as a board, where we get notified when we're going back out to bid on new vendors, and if that would be included in this.
So historically, we've not provided notice to the board about RFP solicitations. There are RFPs on the street all the time. I don't have a handle for it. Even Gina may not for all of them. But if that were a strong interest, we could talk about what that looks like.
Well, and isn't that one of the rules with the FAC is kind of reviewing some of those with in the different departments, department heads coming on, talking about the RFP process and all, right, okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. We'll bring it back for vote at the next meeting. Thank you. Before too many of you leave, I just want to say thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow. And feel free to stay. I just noticed, I get, this stuff can be kind of mundane.
We won't take it personally if you get up and leave during the policy language wordsmithing. We get it.
But
We'll take great offense to that.
Okay, well, now we have an action item. The proposed agreement with True Life Companies. I will entertain a motion to authorize the administration to take all steps necessary to enter into an agreement or a series of agreements with True Life Companies, also known as TTLC, Thornton Eastlake LLC, True Life, regarding district property south of the Educational Support Center that will A, dedicate a permanent right-of-way to the city of Thornton for 125th Avenue, B, dedicate a permanent utility easement to the city of Thornton. C, have True Life upgrade its planned stormwater drainage system along Claude Court to accommodate stormwater from district property in exchange for a $30,000 payment from the district. And D, grant True Life a temporary construction easement on district property.
So moved. Second.
Phil, would you like to elaborate?
Sure. This is a matter that I've kept the board informed of over the last 6 months to a year probably, and it involves the development of the property south of the ESC. That property owned by True Life is just south of our 13.5 acre parcel that we tried to sell some years ago. We ran into some difficulties in closing that sale due to the lack of water availability in Thornton. The city of Thornton has now resolved most of its water issues, and they are now in the process of taking development plans again. True Life is pretty far down the road in their development plans, and the one portion of this regarding the stormwater would be a tremendous help to the district. When we tried to sell this property several years ago, stormwater drainage was one of the issues that we ran into, and the cost to fix that problem at the time was approximately $1 million. So if we could use someone else's pipe for $30,000, that is a great asset to us and will help us get the maximum value for our 13 acres when it comes time to sell that. Two of the three things here that we're asking for, dedication of the right-of-way to build the 125th Avenue and the utility easement would both be required by the city of Thornton sooner or later. So I see no problem with doing that sooner in order to facilitate this development. And the final thing is a temporary construction easement to assist the neighboring property in its development. And temporary is just that, and it will be built in, or the agreement is written in such a way that it will not interfere with our plans or our operations. So I strongly urge you to vote in support of this.
Okay, call the vote.
Director Assad Lucas?
Aye.
Director Battistelli?
Aye.
Director Goldstein?
Aye.
Director Marsh-Holshin?
Aye.
Director Potter?
Aye.
Okay, we're approved. Minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting minutes and work study session of February 26, 2025, and the special board meeting of March 5th, 2025, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Director Assad Lucas?
Aye.
Director Battistelli?
Aye.
Director Goldstein?
Aye.
Director Marsh-Holshin?
Aye.
Director Potter?
Aye.
Okay, monitoring report, direct inspection monitoring, governance process policy 4.7, cost of governance. You have an attachment in your packet. This is our budget. Okay, how we doing?
Well, I can pitch in a little bit here.
Okay.
Met with Jarvis, so we're trending really well. Our target for the end of February should be 66.67. We're well below all of that, except in our other expenditures line, which is 99%, which is the only thing in there is our CASB annual fees, which have been paid. So it should be where it is.
Well, and I don't know if I can speak to this, but because we haven't voted, but I was looking at the projections for next year's dues, and it looks like it might drop a little bit if it goes as planned.
Yes, and I'll be working with Jarvis actually tomorrow to start building our board budget for next year. So you guys should have that shortly as well.
Thanks. Any comments, questions?
I just would ask Stephanie maybe to share a little bit more. I think that the main line item of any significance in the board's budget is for purchase services, and it's my belief is that's mostly, if not entirely, election expense. But if you could talk more about what's in there, I think that could be helpful.
And you can also phone a friend.
Gina.
All right. Let's look to Gina and Aaron to give us some more information on that.
Great. So a couple of things. One, as Chris mentioned, the election services line item is budgeted within the board's budget. We do keep it in there. Again, it'd be one thing if we know we don't have an election necessarily every year or have those expenditures every year. However, if we were to take it out, then we'd have to put it back in, take it out, put it back in. So it's a good placeholder overall. Another piece in there is the board hires the independent auditor. And the independent audit is also, that expenditure is in there. Though I don't like it, those auditors don't report to me, they report to you. And so that piece is in your budget as well. So those are the largest components of purchase services.
And of course, we'll be going over our budget more in the next couple of months, and then it's kind of rolled into the whole budget for the district that we'll vote on before the end of June. Okay. All right, consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the personnel actions as listed: resignations and terminations, transfers and reassignments, employment and leaves of absence.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Director Assad Lucas.
Aye.
Director Battistelli.
Aye.
Director Goldstein.
Aye.
Director Marsh-Holshen.
Aye.
Director Potter.
Aye.
I don't know if we've had so many people stay to the very end. It's great. All right, next meeting, I am pleased to announce that dinner's on me. I threw my card in a bowl at Casby, one of the people that do, and some of us got to eat some of their samples. I won a dinner for us on April 9th, so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Where's it from?
Where is it? I don't even think it's a local. I'll let you know before.
Yeah, my sense is it's a vendor that wants to provide privately vendor-supplied meals at schools. There are some districts that contract with places like Sodexo for things like meal service for kids, so it's probably someone like that.
And I told them that we make our own, but they said that didn't preclude me from putting my name in the hat. All right.
This dinner.
More budget and monitoring next time, and then also April 16th. Any comments before we adjourn? Well, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it was so
Very good.